Hey, it's Jang here from UltimateRC.com with my review of the Tiger TS4e. This is a standard-sized 190mm four-wheel drive touring car, and I'm going to just blast through the chassis features very quickly because I need to save time for some other stuff. The chassis is a very old design. You can see it was actually designed to handle nickel metal hydride saddle packs. It has twin main belts with a transverse mounted 540 sized 3300 kV brushless motor, sensorless. A LiPo or shotgun style pack would mount across the chassis, transverse, and for suspension there's nothing particularly new or unusual. Up front they use a pillow ball system. The shocks all the way around are plastic bodied, and you do need to use plastic slip-on preload clips to adjust your ride height. They do have 3 different options for mounting the shocks on the arms. Caster is adjustable by spacing the upper arms front to rear, and the lower arms have functional droop screws. The rear suspension is more conventional still with lower H arms and adjustable upper camber link turnbuckles. Here you get a few options for camber link length and also adjusting your roll center, and the shocks are the same deal as up front. The car has ball diffs and metal dog bones front and rear, and unfortunately almost all of the car rides on oilite bushings, not bearings. The wheels and tires are standard size, and the rubber compound here is actually pretty nice and soft, as RTR tires go. However, there are no foam inserts in here, so it's very easy to collapse the carcass, and I worry about traction a little bit. The controller is 2.4 GHz and the standard unit that Tiger is including with their RTRs now. It's a pretty decent controller, works pretty well, has pretty good range, has trims and reversing as well as throttle endpoints for nitro models, and it does have steering dual rate. You will need to turn that dual rate way up when you first drive this thing, otherwise you'll have almost no steering. Now for the stuff I needed to save time for, out-of-the-box problems. First off, you notice that the front is scraping and the rear has this huge gap. Part of that is from the front body post being too low and the rears being too high, but even with a little weight in the battery compartment, you can see that the chassis is also raked way forward. Not only is the rear riding too high from excessive shock preloading, but the rear droop screws are also fully bottomed out and there is absolutely no droop in the rear. These things all need to be adjusted just to get to a basic starting point. Up front, the chassis ride height is okay, but once again the droop screws are bottomed out and you need to adjust them to get some down travel. This is kind of weak, but you can eliminate the excess play by just adjusting the stopper nuts. While I'm looking at play on this corner though, check this out. The upper arm has a lot of longitudinal play, which is going to be changing your caster angle all the time. That's the same on both sides and they just need to be shimmed. This little bit of play in the dog bones is just fine. However, trying to move this tire back and forth moves the upper arm with it. The all-plastic wheel nut is just tightened down too much here. All that extra friction on one side is going to be really punishing to the diff, and it'll also wear out the wheel hub bearings, bushings extra quickly. At the rear of this car, again, I had one wheel that was tightened just the right amount, whereas the other wheel was tightened too much. Speaking of things that are too tight, this gear mesh is ridiculous. There's absolutely no gap there. The pinion is trying to embed itself into the spur, and if I drive like this, I could burn out the motor, ESC, and/or battery. Here's another fine mess. First off, for a brushless vehicle to use a Tamiya or a Molex connector? Boo! Next up, for a brushless vehicle to use these snap-together super cheap bullet connectors? Terrible! I've never seen that done before. Oh, and while I'm here, have a power cap. It's a free snack that you can feed to the asphalt outside of the chassis, or you can just feed it into your belt. Nom nom nom. If that doesn't get secured, it will be ripped off. Also out of the box, the control wires from my ESC were rubbing against the lower end of the belt. Without routing the wires out of the way, they would be cut off. So, as you've seen, this car has a plethora of issues right out of the box. Mostly factory assembly stuff that can be easily corrected, and should be easily corrected. By the factory though, not by customers like us. Well, I got this car squared away because I needed to test it, and there was no point in driving it in guaranteed failure mode. On a standard 2S LiPo, the car tops out at 24 miles per hour. 24? That's pretty darn slow. For a 10th scale? On-road car? Brushless? LiPo? Come on! The motor was definitely under-geared though, so there's definitely some room to grow. Handling on a parking lot surface was okay. Traction for stock RTR tires was okay. Steering response is okay. Pretty much the whole car is just okay. I mean, if I was to stop right now and give this thing a rating based on its performance, forgetting about all the stuff earlier in the video, I'd give it a solid C-. I wish it was faster, I wish it was a little more agile, I wish that it had less high-speed understeer, I wish that it had less low-speed on-power oversteer. The whole thing's just meh. I put it on the local track at NorCal Hobbies in Union City, California, and unfortunately, speaking of meh, rain had washed away all the good traction, so the surface was still very smooth, but not especially grippy. Nevertheless, it allowed me to see the performance of this vehicle on a consistent surface. This is also a very useful visual tool for you, as you can see where I was trying to drive and compare that to where the car actually went. The TS4 actually drove pretty smoothly out here, but there was a little bit of issue in turns. It was just a little bit unpredictable. Even with things tidied up, there's still a lot of slop in small components in the suspension, and the chassis is also very flexible. That gives the whole thing a little bit of a spongy or even rubbery feel. It required a lot of corrections, and with an RTR spec servo, it was just hard to make accurate corrections. Next up, I swapped in some used racing slicks to get some better traction, and I also went up 4 teeth on the pinion gear. That brought my motor temperature to within a reasonable range, and it also slightly increased the top speed to 27 miles per hour. Still not particularly impressive for a brushless setup. The slight increase in speed was pretty much matched by the increase in traction. I was definitely able to get around the track more quickly, but it was still a little bit difficult to drive it in the turns. I put a couple full battery packs through it just like this and got all the information I needed. With that said, I'm ready to wrap this up. No, I am not going to do a durability montage. That would be stupid. I'm serious. 1/10 scale sedans will break. That's a fact. I'm sure there are some folks out there who will swear up and down that they've crashed their 10th scale sedan of one brand or another into concrete walls at 60 miles per hour repeatedly and nothing is broken. First off, I don't believe them. Secondly, no, I just don't believe them. This style of car is not meant to take abuse. If you crash one hard and you don't break something, consider yourself lucky. Period. Okay, now back to my wrap-up. I'm not going to bother beating on Thunder Tiger anymore for how terribly this thing was assembled from the factory. That's all just completely unacceptable, especially for something that's targeted towards entry-level users. End of story. If you're looking for a race car, this is not for you. It's not trying to be for you. It's a very old design and it's made with plastics that are fairly soft, so this is for novices and parking lot bashers. That said, $250 US, ready to run 2.4 gigahertz brushless, sounds like a respectable deal. The biggest competition, the HPI Sprint 2 Flux RTR, costs $100 more. However, the TS4e is just slow. Yeah, the HPI is more expensive, but it goes 50% or more faster. That's very significant. Sure, you can change out the motor and the ESC on this car here, but guess what? A new motor and a new ESC, those don't come free. Out the door goes your RTR value. Honestly, you can get better performance at a lower cost out of an Exceed RC car, and I'm speaking from experience. Thunder Tiger TS4 gets a big fat thumbs down from me. That's it for my thoughts on this one. Thanks for watching. See you next time.